Welcome back to the fire, weary traveler. Come, settle yourself in the chair there, the one with the worn armrests. Yes, that's the one. Many who have sat in that very spot have wrestled with questions that have no easy answers, burdens that weigh heavier than any pack. The chronicle I share tonight unfolds not on a battlefield, but in a stone chamber beneath Greenest's keep, where two souls, one human, one something far more complex, engage in a battle of words, philosophy, and conscience. It is a tale of choices made in desperate circumstances, of honor that persists even in the darkest of hearts, and of the possibility that redemption might exist even for those who seem irredeemable. So lean close to the fire, friend, and let me tell you of The Prisoner's Gambit, a story of shackles both literal and metaphorical, of the bridges we burn and of the ones we might yet build, and of the moment when a half-dragon warrior discovered that the greatest battle is often the one fought within one's own heart. The interrogation chamber beneath Greenest's keep was a place that had been built for necessity, but never intended for cruelty. The stone walls were bare but clean, the iron shackles strong but not rusted with the blood of previous occupants. It was, Governor Nighthill had always insisted, a place where justice could be sought without abandoning humanity. Now, as he descended the narrow stairs with a tray of simple but nourishing food, he wondered if that philosophy would prove naive in the face of what they had captured. Langdedrosa Cyanwrath sat in the chamber's single chair, his massive frame making the furniture appear almost comically small. The half-dragon's wrists were bound with specially reinforced manacles, not mere iron, but steel alloy enhanced with protective enchantments provided by the town's sole wizard. Even so, Nighthill harbored no illusions about their ability to hold their prisoner if he truly decided to escape. The governor paused at the threshold, studying the creature that had terrorized his town only hours before. In the harsh light of the magical torches, Cyanwrath's draconic heritage was unmistakable. His skin bore the deep blue scales of his draconic parent, while his eyes held the alien intelligence that marked him as something more than human. Yet, there was something else in those eyes. Something that spoke of honor, duty, and perhaps even regret.
"You came yourself,"
Cyanwrath observed, his voice carrying that distinctive rumble that marked all Dragonborn speech.
"I had expected your guards to bring whatever scraps you deemed sufficient for a prisoner."
Nighthill entered the chamber and set the tray on the small table.
In Greenest, we believe that all creatures deserve to be treated with dignity, regardless of their actions. Besides, I wanted to speak with you.
The half-dragon studied the meal, fresh bread, cheese, dried fruit, and clean water. It was simple fare, but it had been prepared with care and served on the governor's own crockery.
"You seek information about my allies, I presume? Knowledge of our plans, our numbers, our weaknesses?"
I seek understanding,
Nighthill replied, settling into the chamber's other chair.
You led an attack that killed 17 of my people and left dozens more wounded. You terrorized children and burned homes, yet when dawn came and I accepted your challenge to single combat, you fought with honor. You could have killed me easily, but you chose not to. I find myself wondering why.
Cyanwrath was quiet for a long moment, his clawed hands resting motionless on the table. When he finally spoke, there was something almost vulnerable in his tone.
You would not understand. Your kind sees only the surface of things, the immediate action, the obvious consequence. You do not see the deeper currents that drive us.
Try me, Nighthill said simply. I've governed this town for 20 years. I've seen more of human nature than you might expect, both its nobility and its ugliness. I've learned that understanding usually comes not from judging actions, but from understanding the reasons behind them.
The half-dragon looked up, his reptilian eyes meeting the governor's steady gaze. For a moment, something passed between them. Not friendship, certainly, but a recognition of mutual respect.
I was not born to serve the cult of the dragon,
Cyanwrath began slowly.
My mother was a traveling merchant, a human woman with more courage than sense. She traded along the routes that passed near the lair of Oxenail, an ancient blue dragon whose territory included several mountain passes crucial to commerce.
He paused, reaching for the cup of water with careful movements that suggested he was testing the limits of his bonds.
Dragons, as you may know, are not mere beasts. They are ancient, intelligent, and utterly alien in their thinking. What humans call cruelty, they call nature. What we call mercy, they consider weakness.
And yet your mother survived long enough to bear you, Nighthill observed.
Oxenail found her amusing. A human who dared to enter his domain not to steal from his hoard or to challenge his power, but simply to conduct business. She negotiated passage fees with him as if he were any other toll collector, showing neither the fear he expected nor the obsequious flattery he despised.
Cyanwrath's expression softened slightly, and for a moment he looked less like a fearsome warrior and more like a son remembering his mother.
She was there for 3 months, waiting for weather to clear and the eye passes. During that time, she became more than merely amusing to him.
The implications hung in the air between them. Dragons were capable of taking human form, and their appetites were not limited to gold and conquest. The unions between dragons and mortals were rare, but not unknown, and they invariably produced offspring that bore the marks of both bloodlines.
When I was born, my mother knew she could not raise me among humans. My appearance, my strength, my appetites. They would have marked me as a monster from birth, so she made an arrangement with Oxenail. He would raise me, teach me, shape me into something that could survive in a world that would never fully accept me.
But dragons do not raise children as humans do, Nighthill said quietly.
No, they do not.
Cyanwrath's voice carried 20 years of pain and longing.
Oxenail taught me to fight, to hunt, to kill without hesitation or remorse. He taught me that strength was the only virtue that mattered, that mercy was a luxury only the weak could afford, that honor was nothing more than a pretty lie told by those too cowardly to seize what they wanted.
The half-dragon stood abruptly, his chains clanking as he began to pace the small chamber.
But my mother visited when she could. 2, sometimes 3 times a year, bringing news of the human world and stories of a different way of living. She told me your codes of honor, your concepts of justice, your belief that strength should protect the weak rather than dominate them.
And you believed her?
I wanted to believe her.
Cyanwrath's pacing brought him to the chamber's single small window through which the first light of dawn was beginning to creep.
When I reached maturity, I left Oxenale's lair to see the human world for myself. I thought perhaps there would be a place for me there.
The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken pain. Nighthill could easily imagine what the young half-dragon had found. Fear, suspicion, rejection, and violence from those who saw only his draconic features and assumed the worst. You found that your mother's stories were incomplete.
I found that humans speak eloquently of honor and justice when they are safe in their homes, surrounded by their own kind. But when faced with something different, something that challenges their comfortable assumptions about the world, they reach for swords and torches with remarkable speed.
Cyanwrath returned to his chair, his massive frame seeming to collapse inward with exhaustion that went far deeper than physical fatigue.
I spent 5 years trying to find acceptance among humans. I served as a guard for merchant caravans, as a sellsword for nobles who needed problems solved quietly, as a protector for communities threatened by bandits or monsters. In every case, the moment the immediate threat was past, I became the threat.
So you turned to the cult?
The cult found me.
The half-dragon's tone became bitter.
Frulam Mondath has a talent for identifying those who have been rejected by the world. She approached me in a tavern in Scornabel, where I had just been driven away by the very people I had saved from a goblin raid the week before.
He looked directly at Nighthill, his eyes burning with remembered pain and rage.
She offered me something I had never had: acceptance, purpose, a place where my strength would be valued, where my heritage would be seen as a gift rather than a curse. She told me that under Tiamat, the age of human dominance would end, and creatures like me would finally be free to claim our rightful place in the world.
And you believed her?
I was desperate to believe her.
Cyanwrath's voice dropped to barely above a whisper.
You cannot imagine what it is like to live in a world where your very existence is seen as an abomination, where mothers pull their children away when you pass, where guards reach for their weapons at the sight of you, where even acts of heroism are treated with suspicion because surely no good can come from something that looks like you.
The governor was quiet for a long moment, processing what he had heard. The creature before him was undoubtedly dangerous, had undoubtedly committed terrible acts, but he was also, in his own way, a victim, shaped by circumstances beyond his control and driven to desperate measures by a world that had never offered him a chance at belonging.
Yet, you fought me with honor,
Nighthill said finally.
When you could have killed me easily, you chose not to. That suggests that your mother's lessons took deeper root than you might believe.
Cyanwrath's laugh was bitter.
Honor. Yes, I cling to that, don't I? Even when it makes no tactical sense, even when it contradicts everything the cult teaches, I cannot seem to abandon the idea that there are some lines that should not be crossed.
The cult teaches otherwise?
The cult teaches that victory justifies any means, that the strong have no obligations to the weak, that mercy is a luxury that we cannot afford if we are to see Tiamat restored to her rightful dominion.
The half-dragon's hands clenched into fists.
They are not wrong about the nature of power. The strong do rule the weak. I have seen it in every human settlement I have ever visited. But they believe that this makes all other considerations irrelevant.
And you disagree?
I I struggle with it.
For the first time since the conversation began, Cyanwrath seemed genuinely uncertain.
My dragon blood tells me that might makes right, that the natural order is for the strong to dominate the weak. But my human heart whispers that there should be more to existence than mere dominance. The cult offers clarity, serve Tiamat, and all these contradictions will be resolved in fire and blood.
But you're not certain that's the resolution you want.
The half-dragon was quiet for a long time, staring out the small window at the growing dawn light. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with doubt and pain.
Yesterday, when we attacked your town, I watched cultists drag families from their burning homes. I saw kobolds cutting down farmers who had never held a weapon in their lives. I heard children screaming for parents who would never answer.
He turned back to face Nighthill.
And I felt satisfaction. These humans who had rejected me, who had driven me away with fear and hatred, were finally experiencing the terror that I had lived with every day.
But that satisfaction troubled you.
It did. Because I also remembered every story my mother had told me, every lesson about honor and justice and the responsibility of the strong to protect the weak. I remembered why I had tried so hard to find acceptance among humans in the first place, because despite everything, I believed in the possibility of something better.
The governor leaned forward slightly.
What will you do now?
The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Cyanwrath was a prisoner, yes, but they both knew that his continued captivity depended entirely on his cooperation. If he chose to fight his way out, the enchanted manacles might delay him, but would not stop him.
I don't know,
the half-dragon admitted.
The cult expects me to escape, to return to them with information about your defenses and your plans. They believe that my capture was simply a tactical setback, nothing more.
And if you don't return?
They will assume I am dead, and they will adjust their plans accordingly. Frulam Mondath is nothing if not pragmatic.
Cyanwrath's smile was grim.
But they will also lose a valuable asset. I am not the only one of my kind in their service, but I am among the most skilled.
Nighthill considered this carefully.
There is another option.
Which is?
Help us stop them.
The words seemed to echo in the small chamber, and Cyanwrath's eyes widened with surprise. Whatever he had expected from this conversation, it was clearly not an offer of alliance.
You cannot be serious. I am a member of the Cult of the Dragon. I led the attack on your town. I am responsible for the deaths of your people.
You are also someone who fights with honor, who is troubled by the unnecessary suffering of innocents, and who understands the cult's methods and plans better than anyone we are likely to capture.
Nighthill's voice was steady, but there was an underlying intensity that suggested he had been considering this possibility for some time.
You would trust me?
I would give you the chance to earn that trust. The cult offers you acceptance based on your willingness to embrace the worst aspects of your nature. I offer you acceptance based on your willingness to embrace the best.
Cyanwrath stood again, this time moving to the small window and gripping the bars with both hands. The metal groaned under the pressure, but the bars held, for now.
If I agreed to this, and I'm not saying I would, what would you expect from me?
information about the cult's plans and resources, guidance about their likely next moves, and eventually, when the time comes, your aid in stopping them from completing whatever ritual they have planned.
You ask me to betray everything I have committed myself to for the past 15 years.
I ask you to remember what you committed yourself to before that. The ideals your mother taught you, the code of honor you still try to follow, despite everything.
The half-dragon was quiet for a long time, and Nighthill could see the internal struggle playing out across his reptilian features. This was not a decision that could be made quickly or easily. It was a choice between two different visions of what he could become, two different paths forward from a life that had been marked by rejection and pain.
There would be conditions,
Cyanwrath said finally.
Such as?
I will not be caged like an animal. If I am to help you, it must be as an ally, not as a prisoner.
Agreed. Though you would need to accept some level of supervision until trust is established.
I will not fight against individual cultists who were once my companions, unless they pose an immediate threat to innocence. Many of them are like I was, broken people seeking belonging in the only place that would accept them.
Nighthill nodded slowly.
We can work within those constraints.
And if we succeed, if we stop the cult's plans and prevent Tiamat's return, I want your word that I will be free to leave, to find my own path, whatever that might be.
You have it.
Cyanwrath turned from the window to face the governor directly.
Why? Why offer this to me? Why take such a risk?
Nighthill stood and walked to the chamber door, then paused with his hand on the latch.
Because I've seen what hatred and fear can do to communities, and I've seen what happens when good people do nothing in the face of evil. But I've also seen what can happen when someone is given the chance to choose differently, to be better than their worst moments.
He opened the door, then looked back at the half-dragon.
The choice is yours, Langdedrosa. You can return to the cult and continue down the path that has brought you only pain and isolation. Or you can take a chance on something different, something that might finally give your mother's lessons the chance to take root.
As the governor's footsteps faded up the stairs, Cyanwrath remained standing by the window, staring out at the dawn light that was gradually illuminating the town he had helped to attack. In the distance, he could see people beginning to emerge from their homes and shelters, beginning the long process of rebuilding what had been destroyed. For the first time in 15 years, he found himself wondering if there might be a place for him in that rebuilding, not as a conqueror or destroyer, but as something else entirely, something his mother would have been proud of. The manacles around his wrists seemed suddenly less like chains and more like a reminder that every choice had consequences, and that the most important choices were often the most difficult ones. Outside, Greenest began another day, and Langdedrosa Cyanwrath began to consider the possibility of redemption. And so, this tale draws to a close. Though its echoes may linger in your dreams, the fire burns lower now. But don't despair, I've countless more stories waiting to be shared with you. If this tale stirred something within you, if it reminded you why magic still matters in this mundane world, then please, light your own beacon. That glowing thumbs up tells the spirits of story that our fellowship grows stronger. Subscribe to join our circle permanently and ring that notification bell. That way, you'll know the moment I return with new chronicles. The fire burns brightest when more souls gather around it. Wouldn't you agree? Now, if that's the case, share this tale with another weary soul who needs it, reminding them adventure still exists. Tag a friend who would appreciate a good story by the fire. The more who believe, the more real these worlds become. And if you are new to our hearth, explore the playlist of chronicles that I've gathered. Tales of heroes and villains, love and loss, magic and mystery, each one carefully chosen for souls like yours. Until the fire calls us together again, may your own adventures be worthy of legend, and may you never lose the wonder that brought you here tonight. Travel or sleep well, brave soul. The long rest awaits your return.